For many years, I've felt that there was something very different, very unsettlingly different at times. Not unsettlingly different in a bad way, but unsettlingly different in the sense that there was always two dimensions to my life, to my reality. And for the most part, I could not rationalize the non-physical side of it because I was mostly steeped into the physical side. But there was always a nagging feeling, that lingering thought, the sense that something was always telling me something other than what my senses, my five physical senses were telling me. And it would tell me about things that happened long ago. It would talk to me about Egypt. Egypt has always been a point of fascination for me, and the cultures of the South. And for the most part, people who I grew up with in school, they were very resistant to learning history, but I had a very uncanny draw towards history. And for the most part, when I looked at what these things were saying to me, for instance, like the pyramid, they would tell me that there are many different pyramids that are yet to be found, some of which is even larger than the pyramid at Giza. But more importantly, that there were very special things in those pyramids, and there were spaces between the pyramids. If you look at it very carefully, the pyramids they're not random, they're actually laid out on some sort of pattern. And we are just now seeing the pyramids themselves and being fascinated with the pyramids themselves. But when the other structures are discovered that are related to the pyramid, it is going to be way more fascinating. And these things are laid over the surface of the earth, along the ley lines and some outside of the ley lines. There are some lines that are yet to be discovered, some patterns that are yet to be discovered. And when they discover the Sphinx, when they go into the Akashic records, when they access that room is actually accessed already. There are people who is actually going inside these rooms, and they are doing things which is not cognizant and in keeping with the best interests of humanity. They are doing things just like the Vatican does things over the years to define and confine and empower themselves. There are currently people in this timeline that is actually doing things with the discoveries that are not being revealed to the general public at large. So these things were in my brains for a very young child. Not to mention the fact that I was being taught, or I felt like I was being taught, in my sleep, in my dreams. Much of this information, I put it aside because I thought it was a distraction for me. So I didn't put much energy into it. But now I'm getting to the point where my life is falling apart, and the Spirit is telling me that the reason why your life is falling apart is because you're not living in the resonance in the frequency that you need to be living in. You need to start moving into that frequency because there's a responsibility that was assigned to you that you need to fulfill. talking about responsibility, the responsibility is not about being special. The responsibility lies at the feet of they. There are many are they that come, that was sent into this time. And many of they, us, have been discombobulated by the very same challenges that I'm experiencing in my own personal life. But once we get beyond that and to find the frequency that we need to be living at, it's like you're going to be dialed into that frequency. And how you dial into that frequency is not necessarily by you saying, I'm dialing to the frequency, but the frequency is actually directing you to dial into the frequency. And how it does that is by steering you through a series of experiences in your life. That is the dial. The experiences in your life is the dial. And those experiences will lead you to that place of harmonic resonance between yourself, the environment, and the others who were sent to work with you. There is a lot that is unfolding, but the question is to understand the language. They talk about the language as if the language is English or Spanish or German or French. But the language is not English, Spanish, German, or French. The language is a frequency. And how you get to that frequency, you get to it individually and by your own personal discovery. And for the most part, that is the journey. For you to find that. I remember a long time ago when I was sitting in the backyard in Jamaica, I was looking at this chicken coop, and there were some chickens in the coop. There was one rooster and there was quite a few hens, 4 or 5 hens in the coop. And there was a big hole in the chicken coop, but it was at a lower level at the chicken coop. And the chickens keep going back and forth, back and forth. They miss the hole every time because their head was too high. So finally the hens, because they had a propensity to keep their head lower and up and down and up and down, they discovered a hole, and one by one they discovered a hole and came out of it. The rooster, who was not predisposed to bow his head, was always pushing his chest against the coop. Keep pushing his chest against the coop and bouncing and bouncing. And when all the hens got out because they bowed their head and they found the hole, this rooster stayed in the chicken coop 3 times as long. And I watched that rooster. I watched that interaction. And finally the rooster was tired. And when it was tired, the head started to go down lower and lower and lower. It's just tiredness that really brought him to the point where he start reducing his head. It wasn't because it was eagerness or it was his bolstering, and it was tiredness. And when he got tired, the head started to droop lower and lower and lower, and that's when he found the hole in the mesh. And the Spirit said to me from that very time, it says, this is a lesson that you need to remember. Don't forget it. And I have seen it even now being played out in my life, and I've seen it being played out in other people's lives. And how do you translate that? Their perception of the reality is what bar them from moving forward, from elevating themselves, and from moving on to what they should be doing ultimately in this life. So I want to share that with you today. And I'm going to continue sharing because I have been that rooster. I'm tired. I'm beating my chest against the mesh. And I don't have a podcast. I don't have anybody to interview me. And I'm not necessarily looking for that. But I'm that rooster and I'm tired. And these conversations in my head keep going around and round and round, and I keep, putting them off because there's more important things to do. I don't want to pay attention to these things, but I guess I have no choice. And I've listened to a number of these YouTube. I've been fascinated by the YouTube and people's own experiences, just sharing those experiences. So that, just watching them has given me permission to step out and to do what I've always known I could do, but I just didn't put emphasis on it. So where this leads me, I don't know. I don't know what the next step is, and I'm not really interested to know. I'm just tired. I'm the tired rooster who's just bowing his head. Thank you for listening to this, and I hopefully will be putting more of this out there, because there's a few things that I have in here that needs to be said. Not need from your point of view listening to it, but need from my point of view putting it out there. It's been a burden on me, and I am tired of running away. So more to come. We'll see.